Hi there. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit about the Fair Play Method and the piece that's missing from the Fair Play Method, which I know a lot of you that follow me are familiar with the Fair Play Method. It's the main certification that I have, and it's the main space from where I coach from. And over the past year that I've been doing this full-time coaching, I've been noticing some gaps. So here to share with those today. For those who don't know, my name is Zach. I'm your mental health coach. I teach men to better understand the invisible labor that happens in your home, as well as improve their emotional literacy, emotional education, emotional fluency, and regulation. When we bridge into that, I work with couples as well. So real quick, for those who don't know what the Fair Play Method is, the Fair Play Method is a system and sort of an ideology that people can go about better owning and sharing the labor that exists in the home. A lot of folks that don't agree with me don't see a lot of the domestic labor that exists in our homes as valuable or relevant or even existent. Things when it comes to mental load, like thinking about someone's birthday and the decorations that would help them feel welcomed and happy and excited. Things like the default parent when it comes to picking up a kid from daycare. I'm not going to get into the invisible labor aspect because I talk about that ad nauseum in a lot of other videos, but today I want to talk much more specifically about the missing piece of the Fair Play Method. So a huge piece of the Fair Play Method is CPE, conception, planning, execution. So when you look at any responsibility in the home, there are typically those three categories of labor and or effort. So let's take, for example, laundry. The conception is, I see that laundry needs to be done. I need to think, and then the planning is I need to think about when it needs to get done, organizing it into the appropriate loads, which things going to go together, which things can and can't go in the laundry machine the typical way that the rest of it does. Execution is the physical aspect of doing it and putting it in, physically putting it in, clicking the buttons, pulling it out, putting it into the dryer, physically kicking the buttons, pulling it out, putting it into a hamper, and then folding it probably or hanging it. So those are the three sort of aspects of that responsibility. Now, one of the issues that comes up for a ton of people that are trying to implement the Fair Play Method is that when they go to talk with their partner, hey, let's talk about how laundry works in our house. Hey, let's talk about how cleaning works in our house. Let's talk about how pickup, drop-off, daycare works in our house. Let's talk about how the nighttime routine impacts us. There's usually a missing aspect of being on the same page. So I know for myself, for certain, there are a lot of things that I let slide. Even just looking around my desk space, right, is not the cleanest. I know that Alyssa has a much harder time. She would not be able to work at my desk right now. Like, she would probably have to declutter a couple things before she could get any work done. For me, there's a lot of things that I have no problem kind of working through, and or like I have a much higher priority of other things than she does when it comes to cleanliness and having a clean and clutter-free space. So, for example, this morning, so we have actually before talked about how the cleaning aspects are going on in our home. There are definitely some moments this morning when I was having the experience of, this is not a good use of my time. We're in a capitalist society, so there's so many moments where I know that I'm money driven. I'm thinking about what can I be doing today to improve my coaching practice, bring money into the home. And I think a lot of women are feeling different pressures, probably a little bit less money driven and much more so considering the judgment or the expectations that might be on them for the presentation, the existence, the cleanliness of their home. So in those moments, I know I was able to articulate part of the driving forces of those two things. And I think a lot of people have a little bit of a hard time pointing out that and calling it out and seeing and allowing that to be a valuable place to come from. I know there's so many men out there that are looking at their wife and saying, I don't care that there's clutter on the ground. Like, I don't care. Therefore, like, I'm not doing this. I'm not wasting my time doing this. Which I think leaves so many partners feeling hurt, feeling lonely, feeling sadness, and a lot of other things, and or shame that their space doesn't look the way they want to. So in those conversations, when I'm having couples talk through What are your expectations? What are your expectations? What's the frequency of doing that chore? Let's take vacuuming and decluttering. What is the experience that you have in talking about cluttering and or cleaning like that? When we're having that conversation, what's missing is talking about emotions. And they don't talk about that in the book. They don't really talk about that in the method. And that is a huge part of what I think is missing. When you're going to talk about any given chore, I think that especially if you guys are not meeting eye to eye, but I think it's valuable even when you are meeting eye to eye, is going through what we call the core emotion wheel. There's a core emotion wheel. So this, I'm gonna put the link below for getting a hold of one of these that goes through the actual activity of it. But the main idea of it is you go through these 8 emotions. So in these 8 emotions, you have anger, shame, guilt, fear, loneliness, sadness, hurt, and joy. I'm not going to go today into the science behind why we choose those ones, why we aim to regulate those ones, but those are the main ones that we go through. There's a good reason for it. I know it can feel a lot negative. I'm not going to field that question today. We'll choose another day for that one. When you're talking about how you want something to go, ideally when you're both regulated, when you're not feeling angry, when you're not feeling flooded, when you're not feeling overly emotional about certain things, I coach people to have a weekly meeting with their partner. Again, not going to talk about that today. But when you guys are talking about a responsibility that exists in the home, in this case, cluttering and vacuuming or decluttering and vacuuming, what I recommend people do is start off with, hey, let's do an emotion wheel. Let's talk about what makes me feel all these things about vacuuming and decluttering. So I'll start and I'll give you an example. So I feel anger that so many people judge other people off of how clean their home is. I feel shame that I typically live dirtier than I think Alyssa does, and that I feel like I'm always kind of trying to catch up to her standard. I feel guilt in that I don't particularly care, and I know for sure over the years I've had Alyssa feel undervalued. Fear. I think I have fear that I'm gonna always have a hard time valuing what she values and like the standard that she wants. Lonely in moments where I'm being pushed to the side or asking me to not like clean with her, or that the effort that I put in is not being seen or valued because it's like not enough for her. Sad that there's just so much goddamn. Actually, anger too. Sad and angry that there's just so much decluttering to constantly do to achieve like what feels like clean. Hurt for me, I think similarly when like I'm pushed out of the way, or like when I go to clean or declutter and that's seen as not enough. Enjoy what it looks like when it's complete and things are decluttered and they're like, it's a nice space to be in and there's not stuff everywhere. So what I just did there was I articulated 8 different emotions about a responsibility. What you now as the listener have is you've gotten to take a look inside of my brain, inside of my emotional experience of how I perceive that chore. And I think for some of you, there might not be any surprise in there, but I bet many of you heard one surprising thing, like, oh, I hadn't considered that they have that thought. Similar this morning, Alyssa asked me, hey, any chance you could adjust where the towels go when you put them into the laundry bin? Like, could you make sure to tuck them down? And she added to it, every time I see things hanging out of the laundry bin, I feel fear that like, oh, they got filled up again. Like, do I really have to go do laundry again? So we have it worked out in our home. She hates folding. I hate doing the actual laundry and the timing of it. So she does those things. I do the folding. So her sharing the fear that goes along with seeing things hang off the side, I think is huge for me to be able to see and hear, for me to be able to stick to that standard. Oh, I don't want her to feel fear when it comes to thinking about doing laundry. So I can absolutely stick to that standard. I think that there's a huge part of empathy that is missing from a lot of men being able to see eye to eye with their partners on like what they're experiencing, especially around household responsibilities. This is the tool, when you get good at it, to be able to see people eye to eye and build up empathy specifically around different items around the house. So I think it's one of the most powerful tools that Alyssa and I have ever gotten good at, that we've been practicing for a year, but really honing in on the past 2 or 3 months. So This is the missing aspect, I think, to the fair play method for a lot of people, is being able to talk fluently about their emotions when they're talking about the minimum standard of care for a household responsibility. I hope this is valuable. If you would like to join my free community, I will put a link down below. There's a bunch of people that are working on growing, building. There's a couple of modules in there that are for free. Is a great place to interact with me, interact with other people that are implementing the fair play method, that are implementing a lot of these processes, including the emotion wheel. Look forward to seeing you there. And if you found this valuable, you'd like to hear more about how I coach people, and or hearing some of this sort of long form content that's not my clickbaity-ish Instagram stuff, I invite you to subscribe. Thanks.